Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Rescue Corps had seen many species in distress throughout his 30-year career, but nothing quite like the creature floating unconscious in the debris field of what was once a human transport vessel. The being was smaller than most sentient species, with pale skin stretched over a surprisingly muscular frame, and strange fiber growths covering its head in brown waves. "Sir, the Universal Translator is having difficulty with the creature's neural patterns," reported Lieutenant Vex, her tentacles dancing nervously over the control console. "The brain activity is unlike anything in our databases." Zethkar approached the medical bay's observation window, his four eyes studying the unconscious human with professional curiosity. The rescue had been routine until they'd discovered this lone survivor among the wreckage. Most species would have died instantly from the explosive decompression and radiation exposure. Yet somehow this fragile-looking being had survived in nothing but a basic environmental suit, for what their scans indicated was nearly 18 standard hours. "Medical assessment?" he asked Dr. Krill, the ship's chief physician. The insectoid doctor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Fascinating physiology, Commander. The creature appears to operate on a completely different biological framework than any known species. Its cellular structure shows remarkable adaptability, and the neural density is extraordinary. Most puzzling is its cardiovascular system. It seems designed for extreme stress tolerance. Can we wake it safely?" "I believe so. The being's vital signs have been stable since we brought it aboard. However, I recommend caution. We know nothing of human behavioral patterns or psychological responses." Zethkar nodded, his scales shifting to a contemplative blue. The Galactic Rescue Corps prided itself on saving every life possible, regardless of species or origin. It was their founding principle, established 3 centuries ago when the various races of the galaxy had finally achieved peaceful cooperation. Yet something about this human stirred an unusual sense of unease in his experienced mind. "Proceed with revival procedures," he ordered. The medical bay filled with a soft humming as the revival systems activated. The human's eyelids fluttered, then snapped open, revealing startling blue irises that seemed to capture and reflect light in an almost predatory manner. The being's head turned with sharp, precise movements, taking in its surroundings with an alertness that suggested immediate tactical assessment, rather than the confusion most rescued beings displayed. "Where am I?" The voice was surprisingly deep, and carried an underlying tension that made Zethkar's defensive instincts twitch. The Universal Translator worked perfectly now, converting the human's words into standard galactic. Dr. Krill approached slowly, his healing appendages extended in the universal gesture of medical assistance. "You are safe aboard the rescue vessel, Harmony's Promise. I am Dr. Krill, and this is Commander Zethkar. We found you in the debris field of what we assume was your vessel." The human sat up with fluid grace, ignoring the doctor's attempts to keep him lying down for examination, those unsettling blue eyes fixed on Zethkar with an intensity that made the experienced commander uncomfortable. "My ship was attacked," the human said simply, "by the hegemony forces. They destroyed everything, took everyone." The words were delivered without emotion, but Zethkar noticed the way the human's hands clenched into fists, and how the temperature in the immediate vicinity seemed to drop slightly. "The hegemony?" Lieutenant Vex's voice carried a note of fear. "But they were defeated decades ago." "The peace treaties were apparently meaningless," the human interrupted. "They've been building their forces in the Outer Rim territories, taking slave workers from smaller colonies. My people were trying to establish a peaceful settlement on Kepler 442b when they struck." Zethkar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. The hegemony had been the galaxy's greatest threat before the formation of the Galactic Rescue Corps and the various peace accords that followed. They were a parasitic species that enslaved others for labor and resources, treating other sentient beings as expendable tools. "How many of your people were taken?" Dr. Krill asked gently. The human's jaw tightened. "All of them. 347 men, women, and children." He looked directly at Zethkar. "I need to contact my government. They need to know what happened." "Of course," Zethkar replied automatically, though something in the human's tone sent warning signals through his mind. "We'll facilitate contact with human space immediately. However, I should warn you that mounting a rescue operation against hegemony forces would be extremely dangerous. The Galactic Council prefers diplomatic solutions." The human stood, and despite being smaller than everyone in the room, His presence suddenly seemed to fill the space. "Commander, with respect, you don't understand humans very well. Please enlighten me." The human looked out through the medical bay's viewport at the stars beyond. "We have a saying, no one gets left behind. It's not just words to us. It's who we are. You rescued one human today, and I'm grateful for that. But those slavers just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." "What do you mean?" Vex asked nervously. The human turned back to them, and for the first time since awakening, his expression showed emotion. But it wasn't fear or sadness, it was something far more dangerous. "They took our people. They took our children." His voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it that made Zethkar's scales involuntarily shift to a defensive pattern. Humanity doesn't negotiate with slavers. We don't accept diplomatic solutions when our people are in chains. We don't leave anyone behind, ever. Dr. Krill's mandibles clicked nervously. "Surely your government will consider the risks." "My government?" The human laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Doctor, you clearly don't understand how humans think. This isn't about government anymore. This is about family. And when someone threatens human family, they don't face human government. They face humanity itself." The human moved to the viewport, placing one hand against the transparent material as he stared out at the stars. "You rescued me, and I'll be forever grateful. But you should know what you've started. Because every human who learns about this will come for our people. Every single one. And we don't stop until everyone comes home." Zethkar found himself backing away slightly, an instinctive response to something his evolved senses recognized as predatory behavior, even though the human hadn't made any threatening moves. "How many humans are there?" he found himself asking. The human smiled, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than his earlier intensity. "Enough." 3 days after establishing contact with human space, Commander Zethkar was beginning to understand that his passenger had been serious about the human response. The communications array hadn't stopped buzzing with incoming transmissions from various human authorities, military commands, and what appeared to be civilian organizations demanding information about the rescued human and the hegemony attack. The human, who had identified himself as Marcus Chen, former colonial marine turned civilian engineer, had spent most of those 3 days in intense communication with his people. Zethkar had offered him privacy, but Marcus had declined, saying that transparency would be important for what was coming. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission," Lieutenant Vex announced from the bridge. "This one is from something called the Human Colonial Defense Force. They're requesting permission to send a diplomatic vessel to our coordinates." "How many does that make?" Zethkar asked, settling into his command chair. 47 different human organizations have made contact in the past 72 hours, Dr. Krill reported from his station. Military, civilian, corporate, and what appear to be private groups. The diplomatic requests are the polite ones. Some of the others are simply demanding our position coordinates. Marcus entered the bridge at that moment, moving with the same fluid precision that Zethkar had noticed in the medical bay. The human had recovered completely from his ordeal, showing a resilience that the medical team found remarkable. "Commander, I need to apologize in advance for what's about to happen," Marcus said without preamble. "What do you mean?" "My people are coming. All of them. And when I say all of them, I mean every human military unit, colonial defense force, and independent fleet within 100 light years is currently burning towards this sector at maximum speed." Zethkar felt his scales shift to an alarmed yellow. "Surely your government can control such a response. The Galactic Council has protocols for handling hegemony incidents." "Commander," Marcus interrupted gently, "you still don't understand. There is no controlling this. When humans hear that other humans have been taken as slaves, especially children, every single one of us becomes personally invested in getting them back. It's not a government decision anymore. It's biological." "Biological?" Dr. Krill leaned forward with scientific interest. Marcus nodded. "Humans evolved as pack hunters and tribal protectors. We form strong social bonds that extend beyond just family to include any human we identify as our people. When our people are threatened, especially by outsiders, we don't think rationally. We think like predators." The view screen suddenly lit up with proximity alerts. Vex's tentacles flew over her controls as she processed the incoming data. "Commander, I'm reading multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. 40, 60, 100 ships and counting. They're all broadcasting human identification codes. Marcus moved to the viewport with that unsettling calm he'd displayed since awakening. Right on schedule. That'll be the advanced scout fleets. The main response forces are probably still 2 days out. Main forces? Zethkar's voice rose slightly. How many ships are coming? All of them. The first human vessel to arrive was sleek and predatory. Nothing like the peaceful exploration ships Zethkar had seen in galactic databases. It moved with purpose and grace, its weapon systems clearly visible but not yet powered. Behind it came dozens more, each one radiating the same sense of controlled lethality. This is Admiral Sarah Reyes of the Human Colonial Defense Force vessel Retribution. We're requesting permission to come aboard and coordinate rescue operations for our people. Zethkar looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Permission granted, Admiral. Though I should warn you, this is a rescue vessel, not a military command ship. Understood, Commander. We appreciate your assistance in this matter. Be advised that we have multiple fleets converging on this position. We'll try to keep things organized. Within an hour, Zethkar's peaceful rescue ship had been transformed into something resembling a military command center. Admiral Reyes was a compact woman with steel-gray hair, and eyes that reminded Zethkar uncomfortably of Marcus's predatory gaze. She'd arrived with a full tactical team that efficiently set up holographic displays showing the current known positions of hegemony forces. We've been tracking hegemony movements for the past 6 months, the Admiral explained to Zethkar and his crew. We suspected they were violating the peace accords, but we hadn't been able to prove it. Marcus's survival and testimony gives us everything we need. To do what exactly? Zethkar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. To take our people back, Admiral Reyes said simply, and to ensure the hegemony never threatens human colonies again. Dr. Krill stepped forward nervously. Admiral, surely the Galactic Council should be involved in this situation. There are proper diplomatic channels. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Doctor, with respect, the Galactic Council has been aware of hegemony violations for years, and has done nothing but issue strongly worded statements. They took our children. Diplomacy is over. Zethkar watched as more ships continued to arrive on the tactical display. The human fleet was growing at an alarming rate, and every vessel he could see was armed for serious combat. Admiral, how many ships are you bringing to this operation? Currently, we have about 300 ships in the immediate response fleets, but the word is spreading through human space faster than we can coordinate. Independent captains, corporate security fleets, colonial militias, even private citizens with armed ships are heading this way. She paused, studying the display. Current estimates suggest we'll have over 2,000 ships within the week. 2,000? Vex's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus spoke up from where he'd been quietly observing. Admiral, what's the status on the civilian evacuation fleets? Already en route. We're not just bringing warships, Commander. We're bringing hospital ships, transport vessels, supply chains, and enough firepower to crack a planet if necessary. Every human taken by the hegemony is coming home, regardless of where they're being held or how heavily defended those positions are. Zethkar realized that his scales had shifted to a deep purple, the color his species displayed when confronted with something beyond their understanding. This response seems disproportionate. How can your species justify such massive military action for 300 individuals? The bridge fell silent. Admiral Reyes and Marcus exchanged a look, and then the Admiral turned back to Zethkar with an expression that was both patient and somehow terrifying. Commander, I think you fundamentally misunderstand what humans consider proportionate. If someone takes even one of our people, especially our children, the proportionate response is whatever it takes to get them back and ensure it never happens again. Numbers don't matter. Resources don't matter. Risk doesn't matter. Our people matter. She gestured to the display showing the growing fleet. Every human out there sees those captives as their own family, because that's how we survive as a species. We protect our own no matter the cost. Marcus nodded agreement. You rescued one human, Commander. Now you get to see what happens when humanity returns the favor. The transformation of the star system over the following week left Commander Zethkar questioning everything he thought he knew about human civilization. What had started as a simple rescue mission had become the largest military mobilization he had ever witnessed, and the humans were organizing it with the efficiency that bordered on frightening. Admiral Reyes had established a command structure that seemed to operate on principles entirely foreign to galactic military doctrine. Instead of rigid hierarchical commands, human fleets appeared to function more like a pack of predators, each unit operating independently while maintaining perfect coordination toward a single objective. "Commander, we're receiving another wave of arrivals," Lieutenant Vex reported, her tentacles trembling slightly as she processed the incoming data. 47 new vessels, including what appears to be a mobile shipyard, and 3 hospital ships the size of small stations. Dr. Krill looked up from his analysis reports. The logistics alone should be impossible. How are they maintaining supply lines for this many ships? Marcus, who had become their unofficial human liaison, gestured toward the tactical display. "Humans don't just fight wars, Doctor. We industrialize them. Every ship out there carries manufacturing capability, resource processing equipment, and automated production systems. We don't need supply lines because we bring our entire industrial base with us." Zethkar studied the display with growing unease. The human fleet now numbered over 1,500 ships, ranging from sleek military vessels to converted civilian craft, bristling with improvised weapons. What disturbed him most was the complete lack of hesitation in their movements. These beings had committed everything to this rescue operation without apparent concern for cost or consequences. "Marcus, I need to understand something," Zethkar said. "Your people are risking an enormous military force for a relatively small number of captives. In most galactic cultures, such an expenditure would require extensive governmental debate and resource allocation discussions. How did humans mobilize this quickly?" Marcus smiled, but as always, the expression carried an edge that made Zethkar uncomfortable. "Commander, you're thinking about this like a government operation. This isn't our military responding to a political situation. This is our species responding to a threat against our young. I don't understand the distinction." "Think of it this way," Admiral Reyes interjected, approaching their group with a datapad in hand. "If someone attacked your ship and took Lieutenant Vex prisoner, would you need governmental authorization to mount a rescue?" "Of course. Military operations require proper authority and resource allocation. But what if Vex was your offspring?" Marcus interrupted. "Would you wait for authorization then?" Zethkar felt his scales shift as he considered the question. The thought of his offspring in danger triggered deep, instinctual responses that had nothing to do with military protocol. I would act immediately. Exactly. Now imagine that every human sees every other human as family. Not metaphorically, but as a biological imperative. When the hegemony took our people, they didn't attack a human colony. They attacked the human family. And families don't need authorization to protect their own. The view screen chimed with an incoming priority transmission. A new face appeared, an older human male with graying hair and eyes that held the same predatory intensity Zethkar had come to associate with the species. "This is Fleet Admiral Harrison of the Terra Defense Force. I'm assuming tactical command of all human forces in this sector. Admiral Reyes, please report fleet status. 1,537 ships operational and ready, Admiral. We've completed reconnaissance of known hegemony positions and identified 3 primary slave processing facilities within striking distance. Intelligence suggests our people are being held at the Kethmore Station Complex." Admiral Harrison nodded grimly. Kethmore, heavily fortified, positioned in an asteroid field for natural cover. Approximately 10,000 hegemony personnel. They've got defense platforms and a fleet of about 200 ships. Dr. Krill's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, those are formidable defenses. Surely a direct assault would result in massive casualties." The human admiral looked at Dr. Krill with an expression that somehow managed to be both patient and predatory. "Doctor, you're still thinking in terms of acceptable losses. Humans don't calculate acceptable losses when our people are in danger. We calculate whatever is necessary to bring them home safely. But the tactical disadvantage is irrelevant," Marcus said quietly. "Doctor, humans have been fighting against impossible odds for our entire evolutionary history. We don't win because we're stronger or better armed. We win because we're more committed to the outcome than our enemies are." Admiral Harrison brought up a tactical display showing the Kethmore system. "We've been monitoring hegemony communications. They're treating this as a minor incident, expecting normal diplomatic responses from the Galactic Council. They have no idea what's coming for them." Zethkar studied the display. noting the extensive defensive positions and the significant numerical advantage the hegemony held. "Admiral, even with your impressive fleet, the tactical situation appears extremely challenging. Are you certain this approach is wise?" The silence that followed his question was telling. Every human on the bridge turned to look at him with expressions that ranged from confusion to something approaching pity. "Commander," Admiral Harrison said slowly, "I think you're misunderstanding the situation. This isn't a challenging tactical problem. This is 347 human beings in chains, including 73 children. There is no tactical consideration that takes precedence over bringing them home. But surely strategic planning is already complete," Admiral Reyes interrupted, displaying a complex battle plan. "We've identified 17 different approaches to the Kethmore system, calculated optimal deployment patterns for all fleet elements, and prepared contingency plans for every possible hegemony response. But here's the thing, Commander. None of that matters if the plan doesn't result in every single human captive returning home safely." Marcus moved to the tactical display, pointing to various elements of the assault plan. "You see this as humans taking enormous risks for a small number of people. We see this as humans doing exactly what humans do, protecting our family. The risk isn't enormous to us. The risk of leaving our people in chains is what we find unacceptable." Admiral Harrison activated the fleet-wide communication system, his voice carried to every ship in the massive human fleet, and Zethkar could see the response on individual vessels as crew members stopped their activities to listen. "All human forces, this is Fleet Admiral Harrison. In 6 hours we will commence Operation Homecoming. Our objective is simple: bring our people home. All of them. Alive, whatever it takes." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the fleet, ship after ship acknowledged the order with a simple phrase that sent chills through Zethkar's nervous system. "No one gets left behind." As the human fleet began moving into assault formation, Zethkar realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, not just a military operation, but an entire species demonstrating a commitment to each individual member that transcended all normal considerations of cost, risk, or strategic advantage. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, "you rescued one human. Now you get to see what it means when humanity comes to rescue everyone." The assault on the Kethmore system began with a silence that Commander Zethkar found more unsettling than any battle cry. The massive human fleet moved through space with the coordinated precision of a hunting pack. Each ship positioned exactly where it needed to be without apparent communication or hesitation. From the bridge of the Harmony's Promise, now serving as an observation platform well behind the combat zone, Zethkar watched the tactical display with a mixture of fascination and horror. The human approach to warfare was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. "They're not following standard assault patterns," Lieutenant Vex observed, her tentacles dancing nervously over her instruments. "No preliminary bombardment, no attempt to establish communications, no demand for surrender." Admiral Harrison, who had remained aboard the rescue vessel to coordinate the overall operation, turned from his command station. "Standard doctrine assumes your enemy will act rationally when faced with overwhelming force. The hegemony stopped being rational the moment they took human children. The first contact came when the human vanguard encountered hegemony patrol ships at the system's edge. Zethkar expected to see the typical exchange of weapons fire, the gradual escalation that characterized most military engagements. Instead, he witnessed something that defied his understanding of space combat. The human ships didn't engage the patrol vessels. They surrounded them, disabled their engines with surgical precision, and boarded them within minutes. No shots fired at crew quarters, no unnecessary destruction, just swift, efficient neutralization. "Why aren't they destroying the patrol ships?" Dr. Krill asked. Marcus, who had been quietly observing the operation, answered without taking his eyes off the display. "Because those ships might contain information about where our people are being held, or they might have other captives aboard. Humans don't destroy what they might need to save lives." "But it's tactically inefficient," Vex protested. "Boarding actions take longer than simply eliminating threats." "Only if you define efficiency by speed of destruction," Admiral Harrison replied. "We define efficiency by how many people go home alive at the end of the day. Our people, their people doesn't matter. Life is precious." The pattern continued as the human fleet advanced through the system. Hegemony defense platforms that could have been obliterated from long range were instead disabled and boarded. Enemy ships were surgically crippled rather than destroyed. Their crews taken prisoner rather than killed. "This is inefficient," protested Admiral Korth, the hegemony commander, his voice crackling through intercepted communications. "They could have overwhelmed our outer defenses in minutes, yet they waste time with these boarding actions." Zethkar found himself agreeing with the enemy admiral's confusion. The human approach seemed to prioritize the preservation of hegemony lives, almost as much as the rescue of their own people. It was a tactical philosophy that made no sense according to traditional military thinking. "Admiral Harrison," Zethkar ventured, "your forces could break through the hegemony defenses much faster, with conventional tactics. Why are you fighting this way?" The human admiral studied the tactical display, where his forces were methodically working their way through the asteroid field toward the main station. "Commander, humans learned long ago that how you fight a war determines what kind of species you are when the war is over. We could glass this entire system from outside their weapons range. We could kill every hegemony soldier here in a matter of hours. Then why don't you?" "Because we're not here to commit genocide. We're here to bring our people home. And when we do that, we want to be able to look them in the eye and tell them, we did it without becoming monsters ourselves." The main assault on Kethmore Station began 3 hours into the operation. The human fleet had systematically neutralized the outer defenses, captured dozens of hegemony vessels intact, and rescued over 100 non-human captives from various ships and platforms. But the station itself was the real prize. Zethkar watched as human assault ships approached the massive facility, their weapon systems charging. This was it. The moment when the humans would finally unleash the devastating firepower their fleet clearly possessed. Instead, Admiral Harrison opened a communication channel to the station. "Kethmore Station. This is Fleet Admiral Harrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are holding 347 human captives, including 73 children. We are here to take them home." The response was immediate and predictable. "Human fleet, this is Admiral Korth. You are in violation of multiple galactic treaties. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Korth, you have 30 minutes to release all human captives to our medical ships. In return, we guarantee safe passage for all hegemony personnel who wish to leave the station." The communication channel fell silent for several minutes before Korth's voice returned, filled with derision. "You're offering us safe passage? You're outnumbered and outgunned in a heavily fortified position. What makes you think you're in a position to make demands?" Admiral Harrison's response was delivered in the same calm tone he had maintained throughout the conversation. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not making demands. We're explaining what's going to happen. Our people are coming home today. The only question is whether anyone else survives the process. You're bluffing." "No, Admiral. We're human. There's a difference." The 30-minute deadline expired with no response from the station. What followed redefined Zethkar's understanding of precision warfare. The human fleet didn't bombard the station. Instead, they performed what could only be described as surgical dissection. Weapons systems were disabled with pinpoint accuracy. Life support systems were left untouched. Defensive barriers were methodically dismantled piece by piece. "They're not trying to destroy the station," Dr. Krill observed in amazement. "They're trying to capture it intact." "Of course they are," Marcus replied. "Our people are in there. You don't rescue captives by destroying the building they're trapped in." The boarding action that followed was unlike anything in Zethkar's military experience. Human Marines moved through the station with the same coordinated precision their fleet had displayed, but their objectives were clearly different from traditional assault forces. "Marine Team Alpha, be advised we have civilian hegemony personnel in Section 7, families with young. Secure them safely and provide medical assistance if needed." "Roger that, Command. We have medical teams standing by." Zethkar listened to the radio chatter with growing confusion. The humans were treating enemy civilians with the same care they would show their own people, even in the middle of a military operation. "I don't understand," he said to Admiral Harrison. "These are your enemies. Why are you protecting their families?" The Admiral looked at him with that patient expression humans seem to reserve for questions they found fundamentally misguided. "Commander, those families didn't choose to be here. Their children didn't choose to be born into the hegemony. We fight soldiers, not innocents. But military efficiency is meaningless if it costs us our humanity," Marcus interrupted. Commander, you keep asking why we fight this way. The answer is simple. We fight this way because if we don't, we become no better than the hegemony themselves. On the tactical display, human forces had reached the detention levels where their people were being held. Zethkar watched as the rescue unfolded, seeing human Marines carefully evacuating not just their own people, but every captive they encountered, regardless of species. All teams, we have confirmation. All human captives are secure and alive. Repeat, everyone is coming home. The cheers that erupted across the human fleet were audible even through the communication systems. But what struck Zethkar most was what happened next. The humans didn't stop. They continued clearing the station, rescuing every captive they found, treating wounded enemy personnel, and securing the facility with the same methodical care they had shown throughout the operation. Operation Homecoming is complete, Admiral Harrison announced to the fleet. All human personnel recovered alive. Additionally, we have rescued 237 other captives of various species, and we have secured valuable intelligence on hegemony operations throughout this sector. As Zethkar watched the human fleet beginning to organize for departure, he realized that he had witnessed something unprecedented, not just a military victory, but a demonstration of what it meant to be human. They had kept their promise, they had brought everyone home. And in doing so, they had somehow managed to save far more than just their own people. Commander, Admiral Harrison said, approaching him on the bridge, your people did more than rescue a human. You reminded us that there are others in this galaxy worth saving too. The aftermath of Operation Homecoming proved to be more complex than the battle itself. Commander Zethkar found himself at the center of a galactic political storm that threatened to reshape the fundamental structure of interstellar relations. 3 days after the successful rescue mission, the Harmony's Promise was hosting an emergency session of the Galactic Council, with representatives from dozens of species demanding explanations for what they termed humanity's unprecedented military aggression. The human response was completely disproportionate, declared Chancellor Vorth of the Centauri Federation, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated light patterns. Deploying over 2,000 military vessels for a mere 300 individuals violates every principle of proportional response established in the Galactic Accords. Admiral Harrison sat calmly at the conference table, flanked by Marcus and Admiral Reyes. His demeanor hadn't changed, despite facing accusations from some of the most powerful political entities in known space. Chancellor, I'm curious about your definition of proportional response. How many humans would we need to lose before our reaction would be considered appropriate? That's not the point, interjected Ambassador Theklos of the Regelian Union. The point is that your species mobilized a force capable of conquering entire star systems for what amounts to a local incident. The implications for galactic stability are enormous. Dr. Krill, who had been documenting the human response patterns for his research, leaned forward nervously. If I may, Ambassador, the humans also rescued 237 non-human captives during their operation. Surely that counts for something? A convenient side effect, Chancellor Vorth replied dismissively. The humans didn't know about those other captives when they launched their operation. Their response was purely species-centric. Marcus spoke, for the first time during the session, his voice carrying that same calm intensity Zethkar had come to recognize. Chancellor, you're absolutely right. We didn't know about the other captives when we launched the operation. We came for our people. But here's what you don't understand. Once we found the others, they became our people too. What do you mean? I mean that humans don't categorize suffering by species. We see someone in chains, we cut the chains. We see someone in danger, we provide protection. It's not complicated. Ambassador Theklos shifted in his chair, his multiple arms gesturing in what Zethkar recognized as agitation. That's exactly the problem. Your species acts without considering broader implications. What happens the next time humans decide someone needs rescuing? Will you mobilize another fleet? Where does it end? Admiral Harrison smiled, and Zethkar felt that familiar chill. Ambassador, I think you're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't be asking where it ends. You should be asking why it needed to begin. I don't follow. The hegemony has been violating peace accords for years. They've been taking captives, running slave operations, and threatening smaller colonies throughout this sector. The Galactic Council has known about this and done nothing but issue diplomatic protests. So my question to you is, why did it take humans to finally stop them? The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Zethkar noticed that several of the Galactic Council representatives were avoiding eye contact, their body language suggesting shame or embarrassment. The Galactic Council operates through consensus and careful deliberation, Chancellor Vorth finally replied. We don't launch military operations without proper authorization and extensive planning. And while you deliberate, Admiral Reyes interjected, people die in chains. Children grow up as slaves. Entire communities disappear. Tell me, Chancellor, how many proper authorizations is a child's life worth? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zethkar watched as the various ambassadors and representatives struggled to formulate responses that would justify their inaction without admitting moral failure. The humans present a fundamental challenge to galactic stability, Ambassador Theklos said, changing tactics. They operate outside established diplomatic frameworks. They make unilateral decisions that affect multiple star systems. They represent a dangerous precedent. You're right, Marcus said simply. We do represent a precedent. The precedent that when innocent people are in danger, someone should actually do something about it instead of forming committees to study the problem. A new voice joined the conversation as the view screen activated, showing the face of an elderly human woman with steel gray hair and eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of decades. This is Secretary General Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Government. I apologize for interrupting your session, but I wanted to address the concerns raised by the Galactic Council representatives. Chancellor Vorth's crystalline form brightened with apparent relief. Secretary General, perhaps you can explain to these military commanders the importance of working within established diplomatic frameworks. Secretary General Vasquez smiled, and Zethkar realized that the expression was somehow more unsettling than Admiral Harrison's had been. Chancellor, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about the human position. Let me clarify something for you. Operation Homecoming wasn't a military action taken by the human government. It was a biological response by the human species. I don't understand the distinction. Then let me explain it differently. Every human who participated in that operation did so voluntarily. We didn't draft them, we didn't order them, and we didn't compel them. They came because humans don't leave other humans in chains. It's not a policy decision, Chancellor. It's who we are. Ambassador Theklos leaned forward aggressively. Are you saying that your government has no control over human military forces? I'm saying that when it comes to protecting human lives, especially children, our government doesn't need to control anything. Our people will act regardless of what any authority tells them. The choice we face as a government is whether to coordinate that response or let it happen chaotically. The implications of her statement settled over the conference room like a cold blanket. Zethkar realized that the Galactic Council representatives were beginning to understand that they weren't dealing with a traditional government that could be controlled through diplomatic pressure. So you're saying that humans will continue to launch massive military operations whenever they decide someone needs rescuing? Chancellor Vorth asked. No, Secretary General Vasquez replied. I'm saying that humans will continue to rescue people who need rescuing. The size of the operation depends on what's required to accomplish that goal. If the Galactic Council wants smaller human responses, then the Council needs to ensure that large-scale rescue operations aren't necessary. Dr. Krill spoke up hesitantly. Secretary General, are you suggesting that the Council should be more proactive in addressing humanitarian crises? I'm not suggesting anything, Doctor. I'm stating a fact. If you want humans to stop launching massive rescue operations, then stop letting people who need rescuing sit in chains while you debate the proper procedures for helping them. Marcus stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. You keep talking about galactic stability and diplomatic frameworks and proper procedures. But let me ask you something. How many of you have children? Several of the representatives indicated that they did. And if someone took your children, held them as slaves, hurt them, abused them, how long would you wait for proper authorization before you went to get them back? The silence that followed was deafening. That's what I thought, Marcus continued. You understand the human response perfectly. You just don't like the implications for your carefully structured political systems. But here's the thing. We don't care about your political systems. We care about people. And as long as people need rescuing, humans will be there to rescue them. Admiral Harrison stood to join Marcus at the viewport. The question you need to ask yourselves isn't how to control the human response. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem. Because make no mistake, humans will continue to act when action is needed. The only choice you have is whether you want to help us save lives or continue to explain why saving lives is inconvenient. As Zethkar watched the Galactic Council representatives struggle with this new reality, he realized that the rescue of one human had indeed changed everything. Humanity hadn't just demonstrated their commitment to their own people. They had forced the entire galaxy to confront its own moral compromises and political conveniences. The age of careful deliberation while innocents suffered was over. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months after Operation Homecoming, Commander Zethkar received an invitation that would change his understanding of humanity forever. The message was simple and direct, delivered personally by Marcus Chen, who had become something of a liaison between human space and the Galactic Rescue Corps. Commander, we'd like you and your crew to visit Earth. There's something we want to show you. The journey to the human homeworld took 3 weeks, during which Zethkar had ample time to observe the changes that had swept through human space. What he saw challenged every assumption he'd held about how civilizations developed and organized themselves. The traffic patterns are all wrong, Lieutenant Vex observed as they approached the Sol system. There should be clear shipping lanes, organized flight paths, standard approach vectors. Instead, it looks like organized chaos. Dr. Krill studied his readings with fascination. The energy signatures are remarkable. They're not just running shipping routes. They're running massive construction projects, manufacturing operations, and what appears to be multiple military exercises simultaneously. Marcus, who had remained aboard the Harmony's Promise for the journey, smiled at their observations. Welcome to human normal, Commander. We don't do anything small. As they drew closer to Earth, the scope of human activity became even more apparent. The space around the planet was filled with construction platforms, shipyards, and what could only be described as mobile cities. But what struck Zethkar most was the obvious military buildup. Marcus, how many ships does humanity currently operate? He asked. Active fleet strength is currently around 12,000 vessels with another 8,000 in various stages of construction. But those numbers change daily. Every human colony, every corporate entity, every private citizen with the resources is contributing to the common defense. Common defense against what? Marcus looked at him with that familiar expression of patient intensity. Against anyone who thinks they can take human children and get away with it. The Harmony's Promise was escorted to Earth's primary orbital station, a massive structure that dwarfed anything in Zethkar's experience. As they docked, he was greeted by Secretary General Vasquez herself, along with a delegation that included Admiral Harrison and several other officials he didn't recognize. Commander Zethkar, welcome to Earth. I hope your journey was comfortable. Thank you, Secretary General. I must admit I'm curious about the purpose of this visit. All will be explained. But first, we'd like to show you something that we think will help you understand humanity better. The tour began at the Rescued Persons Integration Center, a facility that housed the former captives from Operation Homecoming and dozens of other rescue missions that had followed. What Zethkar saw there redefined his understanding of how humans treated those they had saved. These people aren't just refugees, he observed. Watching as humans and non-humans worked together in what appeared to be educational and training facilities. They're being integrated into human society. Dr. Sarah Kim, the facilities director, nodded enthusiastically. Every person we rescue becomes part of the human family. We don't just free them and send them home. We give them homes here if they want them. Education, job training, medical care, whatever they need to build new lives. They passed through workshops where former hegemony slaves were learning advanced technical skills, schools where rescued children of a dozen different species played together, and medical facilities providing cutting-edge treatment, regardless of the patient's origin. The cost must be enormous, Dr. Krill observed. About 3% of our total economic output, Secretary General Vasquez replied. A small price to pay for doing what's right. The next stop was the Memorial Wall, a vast structure that listed the names of every human lost to slavery, violence, or oppression throughout their history. But what made Zethkar's scales shift to deep purple was the realization that the wall didn't just contain human names. "Those are Rigelian names," Lieutenant Vex whispered, pointing to a section of the wall. "And Centauri, and dozens of other species." Marcus stepped forward to explain. "Every person we've rescued adds the names of their lost ones to the wall. Because once you're under human protection, your people become our people. Your losses become our losses." "But why?" Zethkar asked. "These beings aren't your species. Why do you treat their suffering as equivalent to your own?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A young girl, no more than 10 years old by human standards, approached their group. She was clearly not human. Her blue skin and large eyes marked her as Arcturian, but she moved with the confidence of someone completely at home. "Because that's what families do," she said simply. "They take care of each other." Secretary General Vasquez knelt down to the child's level. "Commander Zethkar, this is Kira. She was rescued from a hegemony processing facility 8 months ago. Kira, would you like to tell the commander about your new family?" The child smiled brightly. "I have 3 human brothers now and a mom and dad who make sure I'm safe. And I go to school with kids from lots of different planets. We're all human family now." As the child ran off to rejoin her classmates, Zethkar struggled to process what he'd just witnessed. "She considers herself human?" "She considers herself part of the human family," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. We don't erase their original cultures or species identity. We just expand our definition of family to include them." The tour continued to the Strategic Defense Coordination Center, where Zethkar finally understood the true scope of what humanity had become. The facility was tracking potential threats across dozens of star systems, coordinating rescue operations, and maintaining what amounted to a galaxy-wide intelligence network. "We currently have active operations in 7 sectors," Admiral Harrison explained, gesturing to a massive holographic display. 3 major rescue missions, 2 humanitarian relief efforts, and 1 preemptive operation to prevent a hegemony resurgence. Preemptive operation? "We've learned that the hegemony was just one of several species engaging in slave trading. We're systematically shutting down the entire network." Zethkar studied the display, noting the sheer scale of human operations. "How is this sustainable? The resources, the personnel, the logistical complexity? It's sustainable because every human contributes to it," Secretary General Vasquez explained. "This isn't a government program, Commander. This is a species-wide commitment. Every human family knows that somewhere in the galaxy there are children in chains, and every human family contributes whatever they can to making sure those children come home." "But the economic burden is irrelevant," Marcus interrupted. "Commander, you keep thinking in terms of cost-benefit analysis. Humans don't calculate the cost of protecting children. We calculate the cost of not protecting them." The final stop on their tour was the most revealing. The Hall of Species was a vast chamber containing detailed cultural displays for every non-human group that had been integrated into human society. Each display was maintained by members of that species, preserving their languages, traditions, and histories. "We don't want to make everyone human," Dr. Kim explained. "We want to make everyone family. There's a difference." As they walked through the hall, Zethkar saw something that made his understanding of human civilization finally click into place. Children of dozens of different species were playing together, learning from each other, growing up as part of a single, vast family that happened to include multiple forms of life. "This is why you fight the way you do," he said suddenly. "It's not about human supremacy or territorial expansion. You're literally defending your family." "Now you're beginning to understand," Secretary General Vasquez replied. "Every child in that hall is a human child now, regardless of their species. Every family is a human family. When someone threatens any of them, they threaten all of us." Marcus led them to a balcony overlooking the hall, where they could see the full scope of the integrated community below. "Commander, you asked once why humans mobilized such massive forces for 300 individuals. The answer is simple. They weren't just 300 individuals. They were 300 family members, and humans will move heaven and earth to protect family. But where does it end?" Zethkar asked. "How many can you possibly save? How many can you possibly integrate?" Marcus smiled, but for the first time since Zethkar had known him, The expression held only warmth. Commander, you're still thinking too small. We're not trying to save some people. We're trying to save everyone. Every child who needs protection. Every family that needs help. Every person who needs rescuing. That's what it means to be human. As Zethkar looked out over the hall filled with children of dozens of species, all growing up as part of the human family, he finally understood what made humanity different. They hadn't just built a civilization. They had built a family that could grow to include anyone who needed one. You rescued a human, he said to Marcus, and humanity decided to rescue everyone. Now you understand why we say no one gets left behind, Marcus replied. We mean everyone. 5 years had passed since Commander Zethkar first pulled an unconscious human from the debris of a destroyed transport ship. As he stood on the bridge of the New Harmony, the upgraded flagship of what was now called the Galactic Rescue Alliance, he reflected on how completely that single act had transformed not just his life, but the entire galaxy. The view screen displayed the latest mission summary, and the numbers would have seemed impossible to believe if Zethkar hadn't witnessed their steady growth. 127,000 beings rescued from slavery and oppression, 89 separate criminal organizations dismantled, 45 star systems liberated from various forms of tyranny, and over 200 species now living under the protection of what had become known as the human family doctrine. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Vagan system, Lieutenant Vex announced. Her voice carried none of the nervous uncertainty it had held years ago. Working alongside humans had given her a confidence that came from knowing that no matter how dangerous the situation, someone would always come for them. What's the situation? Zethkar asked, though he already suspected the answer. Slave raiders have attacked the outer colonies. They've taken approximately 400 beings, including civilians and children from multiple species. The local government is requesting immediate assistance. Dr. Krill looked up from his console, where he had been monitoring the readiness status of their rescue fleet. Fleet composition? 1,200 ships from 17 different species, all operating under human tactical doctrine. Admiral Chen is requesting permission to begin immediate pursuit. Zethkar smiled, his scales shifting to the warm gold that had become his default color when working with humans. Marcus Chen had risen through the ranks to become one of the most respected fleet commanders in known space, but he still asked permission from the Galactic Rescue Corps before launching operations. Some traditions never changed. Permission granted. Tell Admiral Chen that all rescued beings are to receive full integration support upon return. As the massive fleet began moving toward the jump points, Zethkar noticed something that still amazed him even after years of working with humans. Ships from dozens of different species moved in perfect coordination, all following tactical patterns that had been developed by human military doctrine, but adapted for multi-species crews. Sir, we're also receiving volunteer applications, Vex reported. 347 private vessels want to join the rescue operation. Approved. Standard safety protocols apply. The response was always the same now. When word spread that someone needed rescuing, beings from across the galaxy volunteered to help. The human philosophy of protecting everyone had become infectious, spreading to species that had previously never considered involving themselves in other people's problems. Marcus Chen's face appeared on the view screen, older now but still carrying that same intensity that Zethkar remembered from their first meeting. Commander, we've identified the Raiders as a coalition of former hegemony groups attempting to re-establish the slave trade. They're using a modified version of the old collection and processing protocols. Understood, Admiral. What's your tactical assessment? Standard rescue operation. The Raiders aren't expecting organized resistance, so they're operating with minimal security. We should have all captives recovered within 6 hours. And the Raiders themselves? Marcus smiled, and Zethkar was relieved to see that it held no malice. Same protocol as always, Commander. Capture if possible, minimum necessary force, protection for any families or non-combatants. They'll be offered the same rehabilitation programs as everyone else. It was remarkable how the human approach to former enemies had evolved. Rather than simply defeating their opponents, humans had developed comprehensive programs to address the underlying causes of criminal behavior. Former slavers, pirates, and raiders were given opportunities for education, therapy, and integration into legitimate society. The success rate was extraordinary. Admiral, you mentioned families among the raiders. Intelligence suggests several of the raider ships are operating as family units, with non-combatants aboard. We'll treat them as refugees once the military situation is resolved. Dr. Krill shook his head in amazement. Even after all these years, I'm still impressed by human adaptability. 5 years ago, we would have considered raiders irredeemable enemies. Now we treat them as potential family members. That's because humans taught us something important, Zethkar replied. The difference between a criminal and a victim is often just circumstances and opportunity. Change the circumstances, provide the opportunities, and you can change the person. The rescue operation proceeded with the efficiency that had become standard for human-led missions. The fleet surrounded the raider base, disabled their defenses without unnecessary destruction, and began the careful process of evacuating all captives while securing the criminal personnel for processing. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the lead raider vessel, Vex announced. They're requesting terms for surrender. Put them through. The face that appeared on screen was that of a reptilian being Zethkar didn't recognize, but the desperation in its expression was universal. Human fleet, this is Captain Skrell of the Independent Raider Coalition. We want to surrender. We've heard about your rehabilitation programs. If we give up peacefully and return all captives unharmed, can our families be protected? Marcus Chen's voice came through clearly. Captain Skrell, if you surrender peacefully and cooperate fully with our investigation, all personnel aboard your vessels will receive full protection under human family doctrine. That includes medical care, education opportunities, and integration support for anyone who wants it. Even our children? Even after what we've done? Especially your children, Captain. They didn't choose this life, and they deserve better. The surrender was immediate and complete. As Zethkar watched the rescue operations unfold, he marveled at how routine it had all become. Human Marines moved through the raider ships with practiced efficiency, separating combatants from non-combatants, providing medical assistance to the injured, and beginning the complex process of evaluating each individual situation and needs. Final count. Commander, Admiral Chen reported 3 hours later, 412 captives recovered, all alive and in stable condition. 87 raider personnel in custody, including 23 non-combatants and 14 children. No casualties on either side. Outstanding work, Admiral. What's the status of the rescued captives? We've got representatives from 9 different species, ranging in age from infant to elderly. Medical teams are conducting full health assessments, and our integration specialists are beginning the process of determining whether they want to return to their home systems or join the Alliance. It was a choice that every rescued being was given. Return to their original homes with full support, or become part of the ever-growing human family that now spanned dozens of star systems. Remarkably, nearly 60% chose to stay, finding in human society something they had never experienced in their original cultures. And the raider families? Processing normally. The children will be placed in educational programs immediately. The adults will undergo psychological evaluation and rehabilitation assessment. Based on preliminary interviews, most of them were coerced into raiding by economic desperation and lack of alternatives. Secretary General Vasquez appeared on the communications channel, her hair now completely white but her eyes still sharp with determination. Commander Zethkar, excellent work as always. I wanted to inform you that the Galactic Council has approved our proposal for the Universal Protection Mandate. Zethkar felt his scales shift to bright gold. The Universal Protection Mandate was humanity's boldest proposal yet. A galaxy-wide commitment to ensuring that no sentient being would be left in slavery, oppression, or preventable suffering. It represented the complete transformation of galactic civilization from a loose collection of self-interested species to something resembling a true community. What was the final vote? Unanimous approval. Even the most reluctant species have finally accepted that the human approach works better than traditional diplomatic methods. When you consistently demonstrate that protecting everyone benefits everyone, it becomes hard to argue against. Dr. Krill laughed, a sound that had become much more common over the past few years. I remember when Chancellor Vorth called human methods dangerously destabilizing. Now he's one of our strongest advocates. That's because his grandchildren are part of human families now, Marcus Chen observed. Nothing changes someone's perspective quite like seeing their own loved ones benefit from human protection. As the fleet began the journey home, Zethkar took a moment to appreciate the remarkable transformation he had witnessed. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had become a fundamental shift in how civilized beings treated each other. The human principle of no one gets left behind had evolved into a galactic commitment to ensuring that everyone had a place where they belonged. "Commander," Lieutenant Vex said softly, "do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't found Marcus that day?"